Folks, what the crap's going on? Heir of Carthage here, and we are going to be seeing Athens versus Rome today. I know that I had a comment not too long ago, someone asking to see more Rome. They were like, the game is called Rome 2, and you almost never see Rome. Well, here you go. I'm going to make sure you get a little Rome action here. Now, some people might be wondering, including this person who made the comment, why don't you see Rome more often in a game after its namesake? Well, I think part of the reason is because there's little flavor factions that people like to go for. So like the Suebi are fun, the Iceni are kind of unique. You got these other little unique factions that bring a very different playstyle. Now, does that mean that Rome's playstyle is not unique? It is unique amongst the rest of the game, but it's just very heavy infantry-centric. And you probably see some players steer clear of it because of that, just because it may not seem like it offers enough, variability or flexibility. But another reason why you don't see it as much is because in the later stages of this game, Rome is still supremely good at grinding out a fight with people in melee. What they are not supremely good at is the charge and cavalry. And so they can be taken advantage of in those regards. And they also don't have access to cheap javelin throwing spears, which also play a pretty important role in this game. However, Rome does have access to good skirmishers, both Balearic slingers and auxiliary Syrian archers, and I would say their cavalry offerings are not amazing by any means, but they are relatively affordable, at least. And let's take a look at the army that's been brought today. We're going to see legionaries. Looks like a lot of legionaries here, so these are going to be late legionary cohorts, probably something after the mold of like what maybe Caesar's legions would look like here. I think, if I get the history wrong, please feel free to correct me. They still have the chainmail armor. This is not like a late legion like you'd see with the segmented armor. What is that? Probably the times of Trajan or something. Maybe later, I don't know. There are some of those units in the game, though. We're going to see the Balearic slingers up front here. There are 3 units of them, and they are going to be facing off against the mercenary Rhodian slingers of Athens, so this is a heavyweight slinger fight. The Rhodian slingers are not focusing a single target, but they got some initial shots that were quite good, and the Balearic slingers are not doing well. In fact, they're going to have to fall back, and they're going to take tremendous losses as they turn their backs to those Rhodian slingers. So Rome is kind of already at a disadvantage skirmishing-wise. Let's take a look at the cavalry escapades here. We've got a Tarentine cavalry luring a legionary cav around. Now, legionary cav is kind of a pretty mediocre melee cavalry unit, and it got caught here as well by a Hippeus lancer. So when you have a melee cav like this, and there is a javelin cav and a shot cavalry around, just avoid them at all costs, because like, for instance, look at your options here. Okay, I'll come charge in and help defeat these expensive Hippeus Lancers, and the Tarentine Cav are just like, hey, bro, hold my javelin, because they're going to sit back and throw them at you. So it leaves you vulnerable. So this is definitely like a lose-lose scenario here. You can see that Hippeus Cav there with their armor kind of protecting them initially from that fight. So not a great situation for Rome. They're going to lose a lot of cavalry here. And that Hippeus Lancer still has only lost 3 units. And look at this. Rest in pepperonis, you Romans. Rest in sweet pepperonis. So yeah, they're going to get cut to pieces by that Jav Cav. Now let's take a look at the slinger fight here. The focused fire from the Balearics do start to bring down one of the Rhodians, but 2 of them are still quite healthy, and the Balearic slingers are getting savaged pretty hard here. We've got them down to under half strength on the flanks and some pretty bad damage here in the middle. But it looks like at least 1 unit of Rhodians is going to go down. The Balearic slingers at this point should be able to at least help the Rhodians waste some ammunition. Now, Rome does have access to testudo formations. They can move forward with significant missile coverage, this attacking testudo. It's going to limit their speed. It's also going to ball them up so that if you do get charged by cavalry, you're going to be kind of stuck in a position. Oh, my light peltist. Holy shimoli. I didn't even look at this army earlier. So this army does not have any serious melee infantry in it. It's just light hoplites and an absolute freak ton of... Like, this is a metric crap ton of light peltists. Now, light peltists get a lot more ammunition than the standard. So they come with 10 javelins. That is interesting. So Athens is... I mean, they're going to lose any type of melee fight, but... I mean, it is going to be javelin day here, for sure. Like, no doubt about it. We got a legionary here pushing the Tarentine cavalry back. That cavalry is going to be annoying. Outside of Testudo, the Romans are going to eventually take some damage. Their Scutum shields, though, do give them pretty solid missile protection, and most of the Roman units come with some pretty excellent armor as well. So the Rhodian Slingers have gained superiority here. Man, this is going to be an interesting one, because the Romans are going to have to charge towards these Thurio Spears and Light Hoplites, all of which are almost no gain for them. And they lost 2 cavalry units out here that they're going to badly need to hunt down those Light Peltasts. So I feel like Rome is really going to be fighting uphill here. It's going to be a difficult fight. So the Rhodian Slingers are going to wheel up. The Romans could attempt to just go into Testudo and take it. I don't remember at this point how well Testudo is going to protect. Well, that's actually what they're going to attempt here, so let's see what happens. The Testudo increases missile resistance. It does not make them impervious to missiles, I don't think. It will certainly help with the resistance to missiles. So we're going to see the Athenians start to move up some of their forces here. See, this unit here is still taking some damage, but it should offer the Romans fairly significant missile protection. And with the Athenians closing the distance, would at least allow the Romans to move into position. However, Testudo or not, I don't think they can take that rain of javelins and survive it. Plus, you're going to have the cavalry making a mess here. Let's actually see how the javelins from the Thurio Spears impact the Testudo formation. You see a lot of their javelins stuck in those shields. Hard to say how many of these are causing hit point damage, because unfortunately, at this stage of Total War, we didn't get to see health the same way we do in the more modern titles, and I actually hope that's something we get to see in a future historical title, is a health bar here rather than the way we see it here with just the number of units. So Rome's going to use its very interesting Testudo formation. Now this is an attacking Testudo. They're going to come out of it at the last second, chuck their javelins, and charge forward. I like how some of these units remain in the Testudo to kind of stay put. In some ways, this formation's actually kind of good for Rome, because it's going to make it a little harder for the Athenians to try and javelin them from the flanks. I don't know how accurate the Light Peltasts are going to be at throwing their javelins into a fight that they're already engaged in. I know that Illyrian Marines, for instance, have like higher accuracy with their javelins, and they actually can cause quite a bit of damage. I do actually kind of like what Rome's doing at the moment. Move some troops forward in Testudo to keep the pressure coming. Only engage those few Light Hoplites. The Light Hoplites are trying to stop these Testudos from moving forward, because Athens knows that they don't want these guys to close the distance. They really need these Light Peltasts to unload every last javelin that they have. And at this point, the Romans came out of the Testudo and are charging. That is risky indeed, because they're clearly going to be intercepted by infantry and cavalry with the intent of just keeping them fixed long enough to unload. I mean, just an absolute hail of javelins. Rome is keeping some units in reserve. This could wind up being quite good. It could wind up being a disaster. If the Roman allows their stuff up front to get piecemeal picked apart and then move in the reserves, that's where the disaster could come in. However, if Rome is effective with its frontline troops and then able to move in fresh reinforcements late, it could be quite good. Now look here, we're going to see a charge of the legionary cavalry after these Light Peltasts. They definitely need to kill some. However, that Hippeus Lancer is going to get a nice countercharge, and the legionary cavalry is really quite crappy. So the Light Peltasts are going to be too quick afoot to be caught by the legionaries, and so this is going to be a challenge for Rome here. It's going to be a challenge indeed. This is where I almost just wonder if their units maybe shouldn't have just stayed in that Testudo. And just kind of taunted Athens into coming and attacking them from that defensive position. This Roman legion here is going to get caught out without any reinforcements. There is a gladiator spearman nearby, which should be pretty good at helping to support against all his cavalry, but that's kind of a dangerous place to be stuck between 2 shock cavalry. This Roman infantry here has its rear exposed, and I don't mean that in the sense that they were mooning the Athenians, but they are going to be rear charged by the Hippeus Lancers there, which will cause some pretty extraordinary damage. Obviously, anywhere a melee occurs, the Romans are going to be quite successful. Nothing that Athens has here is even remotely close to Rome's level when it comes to a melee, but melee is clearly not the intention for the Athenians. Javelins are their intention. And the legionary cavalry here kind of going away, or still just kind of pursuing the Hippeus Lancers. Some Roman units out here pursuing as well. Now, it looks like the Legionary Cavalry was running from the Lancers. Now it's going to turn around and take a charge. It will get absolutely crushed on that charge. The power bar still says that Rome is in good shape here. And they might be, just by weight of numbers. It depends on whether Rome's heavy infantry can just outlast the javelins, right? So that's going to be the key here. Can they just outlast? This Vigile unit is a little bit lighter afoot. Might be better at chasing down those light peltasts like over here. And let's see what's going on over here. The Roman generals, Legatus here is helping to pin down some lancers. Rome still has a fair number of heavy infantry, so it's going to be curious to see just how many javelins Athens has left. There's a very healthy legionary unit here, a pretty healthy one here. Another one there, so that's 3 at least that are in pretty solid health. This one's not bad either. It's probably 4, and then they got the Vigile as well. The Gladiator Spear is a pretty tough unit. If it doesn't get javelined to death, I mean, it'll just fine keep up with any of the Athenian units here. Here comes the Bodyguard. Oh, the Bodyguard charged the light peltasts, but the javelin volley went into the Legionaries. Might have been a good opportunity to kill the general there. The light peltasts are losing in melee decisively, even against that Legatus, which is not surprising. The light peltasts are beginning to run out of ammunition, and they are going to be introduced to Rome's intended fighting style here, which is a melee slog, and it's one that Athens is not going to fare well under. These lancers are absolutely critical now if the Romans, if Athens wishes to still gain a victory. And there are 2 gladiator spears running around. Pretty healthy unit of lancers here. It's still at full health, or I should say full entities. It's probably not at full health, but it does have the full complement of its cavalrymen. Ooh, that gladiator spearman does not have any armor. That charge is going to be absolutely devastating from those lancers. The spears are using their killing spree, but it's now going out, so the lancers are going to get away with that one mostly scot-free. They're going to take about 5 losses, and they depleted a third of that gladiator spear unit, and they're just going to ping-pong back into these legionaries here. Athens is falling way behind in terms of the power bar, though, and I do believe that the resilience of Rome is going to carry the day here. Did not start out looking very good for the Roman player here because of the loss of the Balearic Slingers and just the sheer number of javelins, but this is definitely a risk that you're going to take whenever you bring this type of army like Athens did here. Athens knows, like, they can't just go toe-to-toe with the Romans in melee, and so they didn't even attempt to. They just brought a ton of skirmishers, hoping to gain some advantage. That is certainly possible that could work out. But again, just the weight of Roman armor and shields and everything here carried the day. And so it's an interesting showing for Rome because, like I said, you don't see this type of battle often between Athens and Rome. And if Athens had just said, you know what, I'm going to bring my best hoplites and I'm going to take Rome, you'd lose by a country mile. Hoplites in this game are, in my opinion, improperly balanced for what they were, historically speaking. They were a frontline heavy infantry unit, and that's how they should fight. They should be effective in a frontline heavy infantry fight. However, in this game, they're kind of almost made to be like really slow and heavily armored cavalry killers. And as far as an infantry fight goes, the only thing they can do is die slowly. So I'm not a big fan of the way hoplites are balanced in this game. Feasibly, now these were later Roman legionaries, but feasibly hoplites would have been able to fight somewhat effectively against early Roman legionaries. The spear is a good armament. They had a good shield. Some of them were well armored, and they were typically pretty disciplined depending on where they came from. So I wouldn't expect hoplites to be a pushover just because the other guy has a sword. In fact, fighting with a Roman short sword up against a thrusting spear could be dangerous, depending on exactly how that fight's going, because the Roman sword was very short. And their shield would provide them some good protection and allow them to move up closer. And obviously, Pila were another huge advantage that Romans brought to a battlefield that the hoplite would not have been armed with. And that could have potentially pulled the shields off of a lot of hoplites and then made them more vulnerable to the Romans in melee. So again, I just don't think hoplites are balanced right for the game. obviously in real life, the Romans were overcoming that kind of old phalanx thing with their new thing. So I would expect them to be better in melee than a hoplite. But I still feel like that it's unfortunate that Greek factions have to resort to more of this type of like crazy armies to try and overcome this. Whenever I'm not necessarily saying they should be able to go toe to toe at the same cost with the Romans, but in my opinion, the Greek factions, their advantage should be skirmishers and cavalry, which is where it really lay. Whereas in the Romans' case here, the advantage was heavy infantry, far and away. Anyway, great battle to Hotel Soap and his dashed opponent here. So it's fun to see that one. Fun to see Rome come in and grab a victory. So why haven't we seen more Rome? Well, I don't know. I guess people can pick them if they want. Rome is a competent faction. They're just not one that comes with a ton of different ways to play them. They do have a lot of different units, but a lot of those units are heavy infantry, and they tend to play fairly straightforward type of game, which I think makes them a little bit predictable. Again, another reason why you may see people gravitating to other factions more. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. Heir of Carthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.